The morning sun glinted off the glass facade of the Meridian Financial District, but inside the lobby of Sterling Trust Bank, the atmosphere was cold. Elias Thorne did not look like the CEO of a multi-billion-dollar tech empire. He wore a faded charcoal hoodie, well-worn jeans, and a pair of sneakers that had seen better days. To Elias, comfort was a luxury he had earned after a decade of 80-hour workweeks. To the rest of the world, he looked like someone who had wandered into the wrong neighborhood. He stood patiently in line, holding a simple manila envelope. He wasn't there for a complex corporate merger, he was there to fulfill a promise. His childhood mentor, a retired schoolteacher named Mr. Abernathy, was facing eviction due to clerical error in his mortgage. Elias had decided to come in person to clear the debt and set up a trust for the old man. He wanted the satisfaction of doing it himself, away from the digital glow of his office. At the counter, a teller named Linda frowned as Elias approached. She was meticulously polished, hair sprayed into a rigid bob, a silk scarf knotted tightly around her neck. She had spent the last 10 minutes laughing with a well-dressed businessman, but as Elias stepped forward, her smile vanished like a snuffed candle. "Next," she said, her voice dripping with artificial politeness that didn't reach her eyes. "Good morning," Elias said, offering a warm smile. "I'd like to make a substantial payment toward a mortgage account and open a secondary high-yield savings fund." Linda didn't look at the envelope, she looked at his frayed sleeves. She looked at his skin, a deep, rich mahogany that seemed to offend her sensibilities. She leaned back, crossing her arms. "This is a premium branch, sir," she said, her voice loud enough for the people behind him to hear. "We primarily handle high-net-worth individuals. The community bank 3 blocks down might be better suited for your needs." Elias felt a familiar prickle of irritation, but he kept his voice steady. "I'm aware of what this branch is, Linda. I've been a client of Sterling Trust for years. I have the account numbers right here." He pushed the envelope toward her. Linda didn't touch it. She nudged it back with the tip of a gold-plated pen. "I don't think you understand. I can't just open high-yield accounts for anyone who walks in off the street with a bag of cash or whatever is in there. We require a minimum balance that I suspect is well beyond your reach. I'm going to have to ask you to leave. You're holding up the line for actual clients." "I am an actual client," Elias said, his voice dropping an octave. The air in the lobby seemed to thicken. "And I would suggest you check the credentials in that envelope before you make a mistake you can't undo." Linda let out a sharp, mocking laugh. "A mistake? The only mistake here is your wardrobe choice. Now move along before I call security to escort you out for loitering." A few people in line shifted uncomfortably. A young woman behind Elias whispered, "That's so uncalled for," but Linda ignored her, her gaze locked on Elias with a look of pure, unadulterated disdain. Elias sighed. He wasn't angry anymore, he was disappointed. "You're refusing to service my account based on my appearance." "I'm refusing to waste my time on a fantasy," Linda snapped. "Security." A burly guard stepped forward, looking hesitant. He recognized the look in Elias' eyes, a look of absolute authority that didn't match his clothes, but Linda was screaming and the bank manager's office door was already opening. The manager, a man named Marcus Vane, stepped out. He was a man who lived and breathed optics. He saw a disheveled man at the counter and his lead teller in distress. "What seems to be the problem here?" Marcus asked, adjusting his glasses. "This man is harassing me, Mr. Vane," Linda cried, pointing a manicured finger at Elias. "He's demanding to open premium accounts and refusing to leave when I told him he didn't meet the criteria. He's making the other clients feel unsafe." Marcus looked at Elias. He saw the hoodie. He saw the sneakers. He didn't see the man who had just been featured on the cover of Fortune magazine the week prior. "Sir, I'm going to have to ask you to step outside," Marcus said. "We value our decorum here." Elias looked at Marcus, then back at Linda, who was wearing a smug grin of victory. "I see," Elias said quietly. "It's not just the teller, it's the culture of the branch." He took out his phone. He didn't call the police. He didn't call a lawyer. He dialed a direct extension. "Arthur, it's Elias. I'm at the Fifth Avenue branch. I'm being told I'm not premium enough to be here. Pull the Thorne Group's holdings, all of them. Move the liquidity to Chase by noon. And Arthur, tell the board of directors why I'm standing right in front of the reason." He hung up. Linda scoffed. "Nice act. Who is that, your parole officer?" Elias didn't answer, he simply leaned against the marble counter and checked his watch. 5 minutes, he whispered. 5 minutes for what? Marcus asked, his brow furrowing. Something about the way Elias said Arthur and the mention of the Thorn Group had sent a cold shiver down the manager's spine. The silence in the bank was heavy. The security guard stood still, sensing a shift in the wind. Linda began shuffling papers, trying to look busy, but her hands were shaking slightly. Exactly 3 minutes later, the telephone on Marcus Vane's desk began to ring. Then the main branch line rang. Then the assistant manager's phone. It was a symphony of alarms. Marcus hurried back to his desk and picked up the receiver. His face went from pale to ghostly white in a matter of seconds. Yes, Mr. Sterling, I understand. No, sir, I didn't realize. Yes, sir. Marcus stumbled back into the lobby. He looked at Elias as if he were seeing a ghost. His eyes darted to the manila envelope on the counter. With trembling hands, he reached out and opened it. Inside was a personal check for $8 million, a direct deposit slip for the Thorn Group's quarterly dividends, and a black titanium private banking card that only the top 0.01% of the world's wealthy possessed. Mr. Thorn, Marcus stammered, his voice cracking, I am so incredibly sorry. There has been a gargantuan misunderstanding. Linda looked up, her smug expression faltering. Mr. Vane, what are you doing? He's just a... Shut up, Linda, Marcus roared, his professional veneer shattering. He turned to Elias, practically bowing. Sir, if you'll come into my office, we can handle everything. I'll personally oversee the Abernathy account. We will waive all fees for life. We will. You won't do anything, Elias said, his voice calm and cold. Because I am no longer a client of this bank. As of 60 seconds ago, my CFO has initiated the transfer of $4 billion in corporate assets out of Sterling Trust. My personal accounts will follow by the end of the hour. The lobby went silent. The other customers gasped. Linda felt the blood drain from her face. $4 billion, that wasn't just a loss for the branch, that was a hit to the entire National Bank's stock price. Mr. Thorn, please, Marcus pleaded. We can fix this, whatever you want. Elias looked at Linda. She was shrinking into her chair, the gold-plated pen falling from her hand. I want to know, Elias said, looking directly at her, what it was about me that made you think I didn't belong here. Was it the hoodie, or was it the fact that you couldn't imagine someone who looks like me having more than you? Linda opened her mouth, but no sound came out. Her prejudice had been her armor, and now she was standing naked in front of the very person she had tried to belittle. The phone rang again. Marcus answered it on the speaker. It was the CEO of Sterling Trust, Arthur Sterling himself, and he sounded furious. Marcus, I just got a call from Elias Thorn's office. He's pulling everything. What the hell happened over there? Marcus looked at Linda, then at Elias. He knew his own career was likely over, but he had one last card to play to save his dignity. Sir, Marcus said into the phone, his voice trembling. One of our tellers, Linda Montgomery, just refused service to Mr. Thorn and attempted to have him removed by security based on his appearance. She was openly discriminatory. There was a long pause on the other end of the line. When Arthur Sterling spoke again, his voice was like ice. Fire her now in front of him, and Marcus, you're suspended pending a full investigation into your branch's conduct. If we lose the Thorn account, don't bother coming back. The silence that followed was broken only by the sound of Linda's sharp intake of breath. You can't do that, she whispered. I've worked here for 12 years. You're fired, Linda, Marcus said, his voice hollow. Get your things and leave immediately. Linda sat frozen. The power she thought she held, the power to judge, to exclude, to demean, had evaporated in the span of 5 minutes. She looked around the lobby. The customers she had tried to protect from Elias were looking at her with disgust. The security guard moved toward her, not to help her but to ensure she left. Elias picked up his manila envelope. He didn't feel a sense of triumph. He felt a deep sadness that this was still the world they lived in, that a man's worth was weighed by the fabric of his clothes or the color of his skin rather than the content of his character. Wait, Linda called out as Elias turned to leave. Tears were streaming down her face, ruining her perfect makeup. Please, I have a mortgage, I have kids, I didn't know who you were. Elias stopped at the door. He turned back, his expression unreadable. That's the problem, Linda, he said softly. You shouldn't have to know who someone is to treat them with basic human respect. You didn't fail me today, you failed yourself. He walked out into the bright morning sun, leaving the cold marble halls behind. 10 minutes later, Elias sat in his car, a modest electric vehicle that didn't scream billionaire. He called his mentor Mr. Abernathy. Hey, Silas, Elias said, his voice softening. The mortgage is taken care of, no, don't worry about it, I went to the bank myself, it's all settled. He listened as the old man cried tears of relief on the other end. That was the only premium experience Elias cared about. As for Sterling Trust, the news of the Thorn Group's departure hit the wires within the hour. The branch on Fifth Avenue became a ghost town for high-end clients, and Linda Montgomery found that in a small, interconnected financial world, a reputation for racism was a far heavier burden to carry than a manila envelope full of dreams. Elias Thorne continued to wear his hoodies. He continued to walk into shops and banks and restaurants as a regular man. Because he knew that true power wasn't in the balance of a bank account, but in the ability to walk through the world with his head high, knowing he treated the janitor with the same respect as the judge. The teller had tried to deny him service, but in doing so, she had only served to prove that the world was changing, and those who refused to change with it would eventually find themselves on the outside looking in.